My name's Anna, and my sister Valerie didn't just erase me from her perfect anniversary party. She tried to poison me with a smile, slipping something into my drink while our parents watched in silence. I swapped the glasses, and now I'm ready to expose her vicious betrayal and shatter her flawless facade. Before we dive in, what time are you listening and where from? About what happens when the quiet one stops staying quiet. The message came through at 8:15 p.m. on a Wednesday family group chat. Valerie had titled it, "A Night to Remember." A night to remember? More like a night to erase me, I thought, my heart sinking. I tapped the image. A pastel-hued invitation embossed with gold filigree. Please join us in celebrating Valerie and Greg's 12th anniversary. I skimmed the list of hosts. Hosted by the Reynolds and Thatcher families. No mention of me. Not on the host line, not in the RSV block, not anywhere. I stared at it longer than I should have. My name wasn't forgotten. It was deliberately omitted. Then Mom chimed in with a heart emoji and can't wait to see everyone all dressed up. My chest tightened. Everyone. I guess that meant everyone else. Still, I typed, "I'll be there. You want me gone, Valerie, but I'll show up anyway," I thought, my resolve hardening, not because I wanted to, but because I had to be. That's what dignity looks like sometimes. Showing up where you're clearly not wanted and walking in with your head high. Anyway, by Friday, I had booked the hotel myself. Drove alone. No, +1. Not that anyone asked. Savannah looked the same. Polished, polite, like Valerie, every corner of the city felt like it had been arranged for Instagram. Neatly planted flower beds, brushed sidewalks, smiling doormen. But that night, nothing looked more manicured than the country club they'd rented. Colonial pillars, valet service, and soft jazz playing live near the entrance. I stepped out of my rental car in a charcoal dress. Nothing flashy, nothing too quiet either. I walked past two young girls posing by the hydrangeas. One of them whispered, "Is she one of the servers?" I didn't flinch, just kept walking. Inside, the room shimmered. Valerie's favorite palette, dusty rose, ivory, and pale gold, wrapped the space like a bridal boutique ad. A string quartet played something light but expensive. I paused near the seating chart, fingers trailing down the columns of names. I found hers, her husband's, even Mom and Dad's neatly penned-in calligraphy beside main table. I wasn't there. Then I saw it. A folding chair, not the upholstered kind everyone else had. This one was plain metallic, stuck near the swinging doors leading to the kitchen. On it was a napkin, not silk like the others, but a disposable square folded in an uneven triangle. There was a card beside it. A.R. Just my first name, no title, no warmth. You relegated me to the sidelines, Valerie. But I see your game, I thought, my anger simmering. I stood there for a moment, watching a waiter squeeze past, carrying shrimp cocktails. The door behind him creaked and released a wave of kitchen heat and garlic. I sat down without a word. I crossed my legs, smiled faintly, took a slow breath. This wasn't a mistake. This was a message. A quiet one. The kind that hurts louder than a scream. 30 minutes passed. The music changed. Conversations buzzed around me like bees avoiding a flower they didn't want. Then came pastel silk. Hair swept like a pageant queen, smile practiced to perfection. She approached a glass of sparkling wine in one hand. "You made it after all," she said. "Not warm, not cruel. Just enough to bruise. Wouldn't miss it," I answered. "You can't push me out, Valerie, no matter how hard you try," I said, my voice steady but short. She leaned in, air-kissed the side of my cheek, and vanished into a cluster of people laughing too loud. Greg followed behind her, pausing briefly. "Hey," and he said, not quite looking at me. His cologne hit first, then a half hug I didn't ask for. "Hope you found your seat." "I did," I said quietly. "It was exactly where I expected." He smiled like he didn't hear me and walked away. I let my eyes wander the room. Each table had a centerpiece. Peonies, floating candles, and napkins folded like orchids. Clean, proud shapes. Mine was folded into a small iris. A mistake or a symbol? I couldn't decide. But I remembered something once said when we were girls. Iris means goodbye, doesn't it? I picked up the napkin slowly, fingers tracing its cheap fibers. Goodbye. Maybe that's all this had ever been. I didn't eat much, just nursed my glass of water, the only one on my table. No one else came to sit with me. A little girl with curls peeked at me from behind her father's leg. I smiled, but she said, "Daddy, why is that lady sitting alone?" He looked embarrassed. "She's family, sweetie, I think." She wrinkled her nose. "She wasn't even on the list." "Not on the list." "You made sure of that," Valerie thought, my heart aching with betrayal. And that was when I realized I hadn't just been forgotten. I had been removed. And I didn't turn around. I didn't need to know who said it. She wasn't even on the list because the truth had already found its way into my chest. It settled there, cold and certain, like a stone sinking in water. The room dimmed. A soft chime rang through the air, calling everyone's attention toward the head table. Someone lowered the lights while a projector flickered on. I watched the glow dance along the walls, casting brief shadows of crystal glass and raised forks. Valerie and Greg stood, arms around each other, beaming as if they were carved out of some magazine editorial titled Happiness Curated. 12 years, Valerie began, her voice clear, smooth, confident. 12 years of building a life with this incredible man. Applause. Greg took over next, recounting memories of their first apartment, struggles with the charity they started, and then, of course, their rise. They started naming names. To our parents who gave us everything. To Greg's brother who helped us design the early charity models. To Denise who introduced us to our first investor. And to all the friends and family who made this dream possible. The word family echoed. Generic, unspecifying, clean. I sat still, straight-backed, waiting. But my name didn't come, not a whisper, not a nod. Nothing. You erased my contributions, Valerie, but I won't let you rewrite history. I thought, my anger flaring. And yet, my signature was still on the loan that got their charity approved. My emergency transfer had once kept their mortgage afloat during the 2009 crunch. When they needed someone to vouch for their credibility, it had been my job title, program manager for a statewide literacy organization, that anchored their proposal. But now I was no longer part of their origin story. The room clapped. Some turned to glance at me, brief, awkward flickers of pity or confusion, but no one said anything. I smiled anyway, because that's what you do when the floor shifts beneath you. You pretend you meant to fall. A waiter passed by, offering more sparkling wine. I declined, standing to stretch my legs. A new line had formed near the display table. People were dropping off gifts and hugging Valerie, offering congratulations. I kept my distance, observing from the side until I noticed the box, the one I had spent 3 weeks planning. It was wrapped in ivory paper tied with a deep plum ribbon, the same shade Valerie wore the day of her engagement party. Inside was a custom bronze sculpture engraved with her favorite quote from their wedding vows, "To build a world where no one feels less." I'd commissioned it from a local artist in Savannah, a quiet piece intentional, and now I watched as Greg unwrapped it, smiled, and held it up. "Wow," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "Denise, this is stunning." Denise, standing 2 guests back, froze. Her smile hesitated. She looked around, unsure, then chuckled nervously. "Oh, sure." He moved on. My name had been swapped off the tag, overwritten. "You stole my gift, Valerie, just like you stole my place," I thought, my resolve strengthening. I didn't say a word. I didn't flinch, but something in my spine locked into place. It wasn't being erased by mistake. This was deliberate, rehearsed. I turned away from the gift table and made my way to the bar. A cousin, Sophie, I think, sidled up beside me while the bartender mixed something fluorescent. "It's so sweet of you to come," she said. "Especially after everything." I paused. "What? Everything?" She blinked. "Oh, nothing. Just, all the tension. I mean, you're like extended family now, right? I think it's great you're still close." Extended family. Extended family. You've pushed me out, Valerie, but I'm not going anywhere, I thought, my anger simmering. I gave her a smile. That didn't reach my eye. She clinked hers and wandered off. And there it was. The thing I hadn't wanted to admit. They had redrawn the boundaries, moved the furniture of belonging until there wasn't a place left for me. I stepped outside onto the balcony. Cool night air brushed my skin, and the sounds of the party dulled behind the glass. I leaned on the rail, watching the flicker of string lights reflecting on the surface of the country club's artificial pond. I pulled out my phone. No missed calls, no unread messages, no texts from Valerie in weeks. I whispered it to myself, not angry, not even bitter, just tired. So, this is how they closed the door without ever slamming it. Then, just as I was about to leave, I caught a movement in the corner of the patio. Valerie. She was standing by the bartender's station, speaking low, her posture deliberate. She was holding 2 drinks. She handed one off, then held the other just long enough to tap her fingernail against the rim twice. The bartender nodded, and that's when it hit me. "You're trying to hurt me, Valerie, but I'm one step ahead," I thought, my senses sharpening. I stepped back inside, the echo of laughter greeting me like a slap I didn't flinch from. Valerie was exactly where I left her, just past the corner of the bar, poised in a way that made it look casual, except I knew her tells, the tilt of her head, the way she pressed her lips when she wanted something to go unnoticed. She caught my eye, smiled wide, and raised a glass. "Special blend for you," she said sweetly, walking toward me and pressing it into my hand like a peace offering. The glass was chilled, rim kissed with a sliver of lime. Valerie held onto it a second too long before letting go. Her tone was light, but her eyes never learned how to lie completely. I returned her smile with one of my own, just as practiced. "Thanks," I said, curling my fingers around the glass as if it were any other drink, as if this were any other night. "You think you can outsmart me, Valerie? Watch me turn the table. Enjoy. It's a favorite here," she added, then turned away without waiting for a toast. I nodded and slipped toward the corridor near the side exit, raising the glass in a silent gesture of thanks to a passing waiter, as if I had every intention of joining the crowd again. I didn't. Outside again, I moved into the shadows just beyond the terrace heater. The breeze had cooled further. I exhaled slowly, listening to the muffled jazz rolling out from the banquet room. Through the paneled glass, I saw her. Valerie hadn't moved far from the bar. She wasn't laughing, wasn't mingling. She was watching me, not in a casual way, not like someone happy to see her sister enjoying the party. It was the kind of stillness that came when you waited for something very specific to happen. My drink was still in my hand, and that's when I knew. I walked back inside. Greg was distracted at the opposite corner, chuckling with one of his friends. A full drink sat just behind him on the table where he'd left it. I glanced around. No one was looking. No one ever really looked when it came to me. With a flick of the wrist, I set mine down beside his and swapped the two quick and smooth. His had condensation along the rim, untouched. Then I stepped back, picked up Greg's drink, the safe one, and took a small sip. Citrusy, bland, ordinary. Music swelled in the background. Someone called out for a toast. I rejoined the room like nothing happened, moving through the currents of chatter with calm ease. 60 minutes passed. Valerie's voice echoed from somewhere near the stage, laughing too loud at something that wasn't funny. I didn't look at her. I watched Greg instead. He was in the middle of a story about their vacation in Hilton Head when his face shifted. His hand touched his chest first, then his abdomen. He blinked rapidly, looked confused, sweat gathered on his temple, quick and sudden. "Babe," he murmured and stumbled forward a half step. People looked up, a few chuckles. Then the room paused. He hunched slightly, a gasp. One hand gripped the back of a chair. "I need a minute. Bathroom," he muttered, already moving. Guests parted. Someone asked if he'd had the shellfish. "It's probably the crab cake," said Diane, sipping her cocktail without missing a beat. But I knew better. Valerie's face had changed, not enough for most to notice, but enough for me. Her smile, always sharp, now seemed locked in place. Her eyes darted, past me toward the table, to the glass I had never touched. She stared at it for a second too long. Then her gaze flicked back to mine. I didn't blink. I didn't smirk. I simply watched her watch the mistake unfold in real time. "You thought you'd ruin me, Valerie, but you just ruined yourself," I thought, a grim satisfaction settling in. In that moment, she realized what I'd done, and I realized just how far she'd go. I slipped quietly toward the hallway, the one leading to the bathrooms. Less because I wanted to check on Greg, more because I needed space. But as I passed the coat rack near the back, I overheard them. Two women, older, dressed in soft tones. They leaned in close, whispering like schoolgirls in a scandal. "Did you hear?" one said. "She's on thing." The other sighed. "It's sad, really. You try to include people, but there's always one unstable. You're spreading lies, Valerie, but I'll expose the truth," I thought, my resolve unwavering. I didn't stop walking. I didn't need to ask who she was. I stepped outside through the staff exit and pulled out my phone. There were no missed messages, still nothing from Valerie. I opened a blank text and typed 4 words to myself. "Save the glass, now." And then, as the night pressed in around me and the music inside kept playing like nothing had happened, I let the silence double again. I hadn't drunk the poison, but I tasted the truth, and it was enough to burn. I walked back in, slipping into the edges of the crowd as if nothing had happened. The glass was long gone, left on the ledge behind the terrace heater, exactly where Valerie's eyes had landed when Greg stumbled away. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I just felt alert. Greg reappeared about 20 minutes later, face pale but now smiling like nothing happened. He pulled at his collar, took small sips of water, and leaned close to Valerie as if to reassure her he was fine. She nodded, touching his wrist, her smile rigid. The event was rolling on as though no one had noticed. The MC, one of Greg's old college buddies, tapped the microphone with a bit of flair. "All right, everyone. Since this is a celebration of love and endurance, let's open the floor to some family memories. Anyone brave enough?" A few scattered chuckles. To my surprise, Greg raised his hand, a little unsteady, but eager. "Why not?" he said, making his way toward the stage with his drink in hand. Valerie didn't stop him, but her expression shifted. Not alarm, not approval. Something else. Like she had just realized she'd forgotten to rehearse this part of the script. He took the mic and laughed awkwardly. "You know, when you've been married 12 years, the stories pile up. A few polite laughs." The room leaned in. Greg's voice turned warmer. A little thick, like the alcohol hadn't quite left his system. "There was this one time our charity was on the ropes. Really bad. Valerie and I were, honestly, we were in over our heads. We'd gone too far, too fast. And it was Anna." He turned his eyes toward me. "It was Anna who saved us. You spoke the truth, Greg, and now she can't hide." The room froze like someone had cut the background music without warning. "She wired the money, no questions, no judgment. Valerie didn't even want to ask her, but Anna said yes before we even finished explaining." He smiled. "I've never forgotten that." I didn't move. My wine glass stayed anchored on the table, fingers loose around the stem. It was quiet in that strange way, like the moment right before thunder. Then a round of awkward claps, some murmurs, a cough from the back. Valerie's eyes were locked on Greg, her smile gone. Not anger, exactly, but she looked like someone whose favorite vase had just been knocked off the shelf in front of guests. Heller's guest. He hadn't meant to. He wasn't confessing out of guilt, it had slipped, and that made it worse. The truth had floated out unfiltered, raw, real, and impossible to ignore. That was the moment something started breaking, not with a shout, with a crack from beneath. Later, after the dancing had resumed and the tension had been swallowed by red wine and cake, I stepped away from the noise and wandered toward the side garden where the kids were playing under fairy lights. I stood beneath a trellis, watching them chase bubbles. A small hand tugged my dress. I looked down into the wide, curious eyes of Valerie's daughter, Elise. Her curls bounced when she tilted her head. "Are you one of the helpers?" she asked sweetly. "Mommy says this party's just for family." My throat tightened, but I smiled. I bent down to her height and smoothed her hair. "I used to be," I said. "Your mom tried to erase me, Elise. But I'm still here," I thought, my heart heavy but resolute. She beamed and ran off to join the others. And just like that, more than Greg's speech, more than the dream, I wasn't being ignored anymore. I was being redefined, repurposed, filed away. By the time I walked back into the main room, it was nearly 10. The room had softened again, some guests saying goodbyes, others lingering near the dessert tables. Valerie found me first. She slid beside me with a calm that was practiced. "You okay?" she asked, letting my words hang. She tilted her head slightly. "You didn't finish the drink I gave you." I let that hang longer, then leaned in close enough that only she could hear. "No," I said gently, "but your husband did." Valerie's smile didn't vanish completely, but it stopped meaning anything. She blinked once. "You know I outsmarted you, Valerie, and you can't undo it," I said, my voice low and fierce. I walked past her and took a seat by the piano, not to play, just to be seen, present, quiet. If I walked out now, they win, so instead I stayed and let them make the next mistake. So I stayed. I sat with my back straight and my mouth closed, refusing to be the one who flinched first. I watched the room shift back into laughter, watched plates of lemon tart pass, watched Valerie sip from a fresh glass of wine as if nothing had happened. Until it did. Just before the final toasts, just as someone was dimming the lights again for a closing montage, Valerie stood. She didn't tap the microphone. She didn't clear her throat. She just spoke like a teacher scolding a classroom she still expected obedience from. "I know tonight's meant to be joyful," she said, her voice tight and high like a string stretched too far. "But I can't ignore what's just happened." The room quieted instantly. Forks paused mid-air. Even the quartet lowered their instruments. She looked down, nodded toward Greg, who still looked pale, and placed a hand over her heart. My husband almost collapsed. Something was not right, and we've traced it back to the drinks. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. I gave someone something kind, a gesture of trust. And she, her voice cracked just a little, enough to sound rehearsed, turned it into a weapon. Gasps bloomed like poppies. Someone dropped a spoon. Greg's face dropped further into confusion. He shifted in his seat, half recovering from whatever was still crawling under his skin, and opened his mouth, but closed it again. She hadn't cleared this with him. All eyes turned to me, and I realized this was always the plan. Or maybe not always, but once she saw Greg fall apart, she adjusted. She sharpened the story. She needed a villain, so here I was. "You're framing me, Valerie, but I'll turn your lies against you," I thought, my mind racing with strategy. I didn't rise. I didn't speak. I kept my hands folded in my lap, and for the first time that night I let myself feel it fully. The weight of collective silence. No one spoke up for me, not Greg, not Diane, not even my own father, sitting 2 tables down, eyes trained on his folded napkin like it was scripture. This was the real drink they handed me. Humiliation served cold in front of everyone. The MC, visibly rattled, tried to redirect after a few beats. "Well, okay then. Maybe we should get back to the slideshow and celebrate a little more. It was clumsy. It worked, for now." I slipped out, not because I was running, because I needed to breathe. Down a side hallway near the AV station, a kid in his 30s was hunched over a laptop, fiddling with the projector's playlist. He looked up as I passed. "Hey, wait. You're Anna, right?" I nodded. "I think I've got you in the system. I mean, I had you." He turned the laptop toward me. "Valerie gave me the final photo set, but like I thought I remembered seeing you in some of the earlier versions." He clicked through the photos, one after another. Family barbecues, 4th of July, hospital visit after Dad's heart scare. And I was gone. Not cropped, not blurred, removed. In one picture, my shoulder was still visible, awkward like I'd been in the way of something prettier, but everything else gone. "That's not a mistake," I whispered. "You erased my existence, Valerie, but I have proof," I thought, my determination fierce. He said nothing, just looked awkward, like a waiter who'd just spilled something on a widow and didn't know what napkin to grab first. I thanked him and left. I found the nearest women's room and locked myself in the farthest stall. No sobs, just release. Tears came fast, hot, but my hands stayed clenched. I looked at myself in the mirror when I was done. Eyes puffy, lip trembling, hair immaculate. "This is what a razor looks like," I said out loud. And then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Just a single message. "I saw what happened and I have footage." It's not the first time she's done this. No name, but it was enough because just like that, the story shifted. Not in their favor, not this time. After I wiped my eyes and steadied my hands, I stepped into the hallway where voices still buzzed and heels clicked like nothing had shifted. But for me, everything had. And something about that message, that one message, lit a part of me that hadn't burned in years. I slipped into the coat closet, closed the door behind me, sat on the bench, opened the video file. It loaded slowly. My thumb tapped against my knee, not out of nerves but timing. The screen flickered. A silent video began, dimly lit bar, Valerie in that signature silk dress. Back to the camera, but her profile unmistakable. She pulled something from her clutch, tipped it quickly into a flute of sparkling wine, spoke to the bartender, leaning in. He nodded. She looked around, then gestured toward the dining area. The timestamp didn't lie. 9:12 p.m., exactly when I saw her offer the drink just for me. Another clip followed. Greg, mid-laugh, accepting the flute, tipping it back in one swift celebratory gulp. A third clip, Valerie off to the side, speaking to a woman I didn't recognize, her hand fluttering as if dismissing something. She was supposed to be too dizzy to ruin anything. I paused the video, stared at the screen. I should have felt rage, but what I felt was precision. Clean, cold, like everything that had been swirling finally snapped into a line. You handed me your downfall, Valerie, on camera, I thought, a steely calm taking over. My phone buzzed again. This time no name, but a second message. Check your investments. I already knew where to look. I'd helped Greg get that charity off the ground years ago. Wrote the first check myself. Not because he asked, but because Valerie looked me in the eyes one night over dinner and said, "If this works out, it'll lift us all." Back home, I'd filed the originals, but I had a scanned copy of the initial agreement saved in my cloud. I opened it, my name clear as day. Anna Reynolds, 30% silent investor. Then I pulled up the updated version from last year when they refinanced. No mention of me, just a footnote from the attorney. Per your request. Removed silent investor reference, July 2022. I didn't feel dizzy. I felt documented. My mouth went dry, but not from grief, from clarity. I wasn't just being cut out socially. I'd been erased on paper, legally, intentionally. I stared out the tiny slit of light beneath the closet door. Then I called my attorney. "Save that video," I said, keeping my voice low and flat. Quietly, she didn't ask questions. Next, I clicked the number that had sent me the file. It rang twice. Then, it was Denise, Valerie's longtime friend, her one shadow consultant, the one she used to parade as her charity's image advisor before Denise abruptly stopped showing up to anything. "I knew it was you," I said. "How long have you had the footage?" "Since I saw what she did," she said simply. 4 years ago. She told me I embarrassed her charity, that my look was outdated, but really, I got too much attention at one launch. She had me cropped out of all her promos the next day. Silence stretched. Denise added, "She does this. Quiet war, pretty knives, and people let her because she smiles when she cuts." I didn't say anything for a moment, then, "Will you testify?" "I already hit record," she said. A pause, then a click. I didn't smile. I just exhaled, because when someone builds a life by editing people out, they forget one thing. Sometimes the person they try to erase is the one who kept all the records. The ride to Valerie's house was short, but in my chest, something long overdue had settled into place. I didn't fidget with my phone. I didn't rehearse anything. I didn't need to. That night, her dining room was dressed like a catalog spread. Muted florals, soft candlelight, name cards etched in cursive, 6 chairs, carefully chosen guests. The illusion of harmony. I stepped in, offered a polite nod to our parents, and sat across from Valerie. Reg barely made eye contact. Denise arrived last, quietly slipping into her seat with a tired smile. She didn't bring a gift. She didn't need to. Valerie played the part to perfection, passing dishes, making small talk, complimenting Mom's scarf. Her voice didn't tremble once. She noticed the shift in air, she didn't show it. We got through dinner without incident, but it was the silence that made the forks heavier. She brought out a layered chocolate cake, cut meticulously. I accepted a slice. Everyone did. She lit the centerpiece candles and said, "Desert always brings peace, doesn't it?" I looked at her and smiled. Just once, then, without a word, I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, slid the remote across the table, the one that connected to the flat screen behind us. "Would anyone mind watching something?" I asked. No one answered. I tapped the remote. The TV hummed to life. The dining room's warm tones dimmed in comparison to the cold image on screen. There was Valerie, in the dress she was so proud of, leaning across the bar, pulling a bottle from her clutch, tilting it into a flute of sparkling wine. Her posture fluid, deliberate. Then a cut to Greg lifting that same glass mid-laugh. The screen froze as he swallowed. The last clip, Valerie whispering to a woman off-frame. She was supposed to be too dizzy to ruin anything. Mother. Tennis. Dad's fork clinked against his plate. Mom's face drained color. Denise never looked away from the screen. Greg's chair creaked as he leaned forward. What is this? Valerie's voice broke. It's fake. You can edit anything nowadays, you know that. Fake. You can't leeway out of this nowadays, I said, my voice calm but cutting. Denise calmly reached into her purse. She slid a folder across the table. Slow, certain. Inside screenshots with timestamps, metadatasts, a copy of the full uncut video file with chain of custody documentation and a printed letter. Valerie's handwriting dated 3 years ago from one of her therapy sessions. I'd read it before. I struggle with the need to control how others see Anna. She was always too quiet, too capable. I couldn't stand it. Valerie's mouth parted, but no words came out. I let the moment breathe, then said, I'm not here to destroy your life, Valerie, just to reclaim mine. You tried to break me, but I'm stronger than you ever imagined, I said, my eyes locked on hers. She looked at me like she didn't understand the language I was speaking. Maybe she didn't. Not really. Dad didn't speak. He just pushed his plate away. Mom whispered, Valerie, how could you? Greg rose from his chair but said nothing. His hands trembled slightly. Denise stood next. She placed one hand on my shoulder. You ready? I nodded, picked up my bag, hauled at the doorway. This was never about revenge, I said. It was about visibility. I was never the problem. I was just inconvenient. No one followed us. No one told us to stay. And for the first time in a very long time, I walked away from that house without wondering if I should have done something differently. I never expected the silence to last. Not in Valerie's world. 4 days after the dinner, my phone pinged with a video link, anonymous, sent from an account called Reynolds Family Truth. The thumbnail alone made my stomach drop. It was me, crying. Not recent, not real. It was a clip from 7 years ago, recorded during a panic attack after Mom's surgery, and now the caption read, Unstable sister ruins family legacy. Again, it had been cut down to 30 seconds. No context, no audio beyond my ragged breathing, and it was gaining traction. Likes, reposts, comments like, why is she always the victim, or someone get this woman help. I knew the handwriting behind it, even if it came from a fan account. Valerie's fingerprints were all over it, the phrasing, the timing, the cruelty dressed in polished branding. She couldn't undo the video from the dinner, so she tried to bury it in a different narrative, one that cast her as the composed older sister forced to endure her dramatic, broken sibling. You're trying to smear me, Valerie, but I'll expose you with the truth, I thought, my fingers trembling with resolve. It worked. At first, my inbox filled with passive-aggressive questions from board members at my organization or just checking in. Is everything all right mentally? I saw something online that concerned me. Are you safe? I didn't answer them immediately. Instead, I opened my drive. I pulled the uncut security video. I pulled the scanned investment documents, every check stub, every contract with my name quietly erased. I pulled the therapy letter Valerie once left in a shared folder back when she still believed in healing. If she ever speaks, we're done, she'd written in a voice memo after an argument. I'd kept that too. And I wrote, not for vengeance, not even for vindication. I wrote because silence hadn't saved me. The essay I sent to local press, a few trusted bloggers, and one longtime donor started simply, I was never a threat to the family legacy. I just refused to be erased from it. Attached were files, proofs, screenshots, receipts, and the voice memo. It was shared widely within hours. No drama, no shouting, just documentation. Valerie responded by going dark. Her social media accounts vanished overnight, but the damage was done. Not because I had tried to destroy her, but because I had simply told the truth. Her sponsors began pulling partnerships. One board member from her charity issued a public resignation citing irreconcilable values. And Greg, he packed a small suitcase and checked into a downtown hotel. No dramatic farewell, no explanation. He didn't even return her call the night I saw her sobbing alone in her car. It would have hurt me once. It would have made me feel pity. But not now. Not after everything. Instead, I opened a new email. One that had landed that morning in my inbox. Subject line: "Thank you. I watched you stay quiet for years. I watched them spin your absence into a story that made them look better. Watching you speak now is everything. Please don't stop." I leaned back, staring at the screen. Not smiling, not crying, just breathing. Because finally the air felt like mine again. The air that morning carried a stillness I hadn't felt in years. Not silence exactly, but steadiness, like the ground under me had finally stopped shifting. I arrived early before the first guest. The multi-purpose hall we'd rented wasn't opulent, but it was ours. A community center just outside Savannah, renovated with funds from the new community grant we'd secured. This wasn't about press or applause. It was about what came next. The chairs were already arranged in a wide circle, sunlight filtering through the high windows. On each table sat stacks of handouts, fresh notebooks, and something I'd personally folded late into the night. An iris napkin. Not an orchid, not a rose. A folded iris. Simple, resilient, quietly intricate. It was the kind of flower that didn't beg for attention. It just stood, grew, returned. The first guests arrived slowly, women mostly in their 50s and 60s, some older, a few younger. You could see it in their posture. The weight of too many years being interrupted, talked over, dismissed. A few had come alone. Others clutched tote bags like armor. I welcomed them by name, one by one. No one was forgotten. By the time I stepped up to the small podium we'd set up near the front, every seat was filled. I didn't use a microphone. I wanted my voice to meet them without filters. "Thank you for being here," I said steadily. "This room is built by women who know what it feels like to disappear and choose not to." I paused, watching eyes meet mine. Some blinking back tears, others just nodding. "This isn't a speech," I continued. "It's a beginning." There was a ripple of quiet agreement. And then, because the universe loves irony, a floral delivery was brought in. Purple irises, no card at first, just a blank envelope. I opened it. The message inside was handwritten. "You stood still when the world pushed. You chose to walk forward." No signature, just the handwriting I recognized. Elegant, careful. I set aside on the podium. I didn't read it aloud to the group, but later during the break someone asked, so I did, and then I tossed it in the recycling bin. I didn't need to keep it. A closure doesn't always mean forgiveness. Sometimes it just means the door no longer opens both ways. As the event wound down and most people had left, I stayed behind, tidied up, walked the room once more. I let myself breathe in the feeling of something finished and something beginning. That's when I saw him. Greg standing near the back, hands clasped in front of him. Not in a suit this time, just a plain jacket. Civilian in every sense. We didn't hug. He approached, nodded once, and held out his hand. I took it. "I should have listened," he said, when he gave me the chance. I studied his face. The lines looked deeper than I remembered. Not older, just clearer, but they still need sunlight. He nodded again, and left without asking for anything. No apology, no performance. And that, strangely, was enough. I stayed behind another hour, sat at the last table near the windows, watching the sky burn soft orange and gold. A girl wandered over, maybe 8 or 9. She'd been there with her grandmother, one of the attendees. She tilted her head. "Are you the lady who built this place?" I smiled. "One of many." She looked down at the napkin by her plate, fingering the folds. "It's pretty," she said. "It's an iris," I told her. "We fold them to remember." "Remember what? The ones who were left out," I said, and brought themselves back in. "I brought myself back, Valerie, and you can't take that away," I thought, my heart steady with triumph. She nodded like it made perfect sense. Maybe it did. She walked off. I stayed a few minutes longer, not waiting, just being. Sometimes the best way to write your story is to stop waiting for someone else to include